The J&L 3.0 driver's side oil separator that we're talking about here today will be for the 2018 and newer 5-liter owners looking to help capture the oily vapors produced during combustion from being rerouted back into your intake, dirtying things up over the years. Now the J&L will feature a made in the USA black billet aluminum canister. 3 ounces is your capacity here. And of course you're looking at the factory style lines and fittings, all for right around the high $100 price point. Now install will be a total plug and play job here, guys. So figure a very soft 2 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter, maybe an hour or so to knock this one out from start to finish, as we'll show you later in the video. So I'm sure most of you guys know that your Mustang has what is called a PCV system, which is short for positive crankcase ventilation. Now the purpose of this system is to help regulate and ultimately remove fumes and oily vapors produced during combustion from the engine crankcase and to help alleviate crankcase pressure, which if not addressed could lead to things like oil leaks or seal damage. Now because laws do mandate that the PCV system be sealed, in other words not vented to atmosphere, the engine has to use vacuum to draw these vapors out and basically plumb them back into your intake tract, where they are to be burned off during the next combustion cycle. Now that all sounds good in theory, right? And a lot of times these oily vapors end up leaving residue in the intake tract or intake manifold, and even in some cases, extreme cases, on the backside of your intake valves, which can lead to diluting your gas, misfires, and even valve coking over the years. Now, the Coyote does have both a passenger and a driver side PCV hose. And full disclosure, guys, the passenger side typically does most of the heavy lifting in regards to being the more productive side, if you will. And listen, if you haven't already considered or installed a passenger side separator, you can certainly find those here on the site as well from companies like J&L. However, the driver side, I would say, certainly going to be a great complement to the passenger side, and when both are installed would ultimately equate to the ultimate protection for your 5-liter in regards to protecting it from that sludge or oily vapor buildup over time. So how does this little guy work? Well, basically what happens is that oily vapor is going to pass through your hoses and into the J&L separator. Now at that point, all the solids, the microscopic little globs of oil and unburnt fuel will basically collect in the filter media up top here, that aluminum honeycomb stainless steel mesh, and then drop down into the canister while still allowing fresh, clean air to pass through your PCV system as intended. Now, J&L claims that checking and basically emptying this thing every few thousand miles is always a good idea. And from personal experience, guys, you might be surprised just how fast these things do tend to fill up, depending on a lot of different variables such as your weather, condition of your engine, and so forth. So my point is, check it a couple times every oil change interval, you should be good to go. And when it does come time to empty this thing, just make sure you're doing so responsibly. Construction is going to be extremely solid here with the J&L option, and that does include the knurled billet aluminum canister here, guys. Again, made in the USA. 3-ounce capacity, hence the 3.0 in the name, along with the J&L logo cut in the top of the canister, along with your included bracket. Do want to quickly point out, guys, J&L, formerly known as JLT here as far as the oil separators are concerned. They did recently change up the name, but it's the same great quality they've built up over the years. Now, in addition to your 3-ounce canister and the included bracket, you're also looking at the factory style lines and fittings here. And again, your stealthy anodized black finish with this particular option. Me personally, I like the black. I think it kind of disappears under the hood, looks very stealthy as I mentioned earlier, but if you preferred maybe a little bit more flash under the hood, then you can always consider the silver anodized version instead, also from J&L. Available on the site, both passenger and driver side, for a very similar price point. But again, going back to one of the big pros for me with the J&L kit is the inclusion of your factory lines and push style fittings here, which will deliver a very factory-like fit, but also a very easy install. Now, speaking of that install, let's talk a little bit more on that, guys. Again, plug and play job for the most part here. Again, you do have to do a little bit of work getting your bracket in place and then ultimately the canister mounted to the bracket, but that can be done with a simple Phillips head screwdriver. But to give you a better idea of how exactly this job will go down on your GT at home, feel free to check out our detailed walkthrough and tool breakdown now.
The tools you'll need for this project are a ratchet, an extension, a 10mm socket, a 10mm wrench, a number 2 Phillips screwdriver, a pair of pliers, a trim removal tool, and some tape. Hi everyone. Today we're installing an oil separator on our Mustang. So let's get started with the uninstall of a couple of pieces first. So the first thing we need to do is remove our engine cover, and there's 2 nuts in the front, here and here, and we're going to use our 10mm socket to remove those. Now we're going to remove the factory sound tube by loosening this spring clamp here and using a trim removal tool on this piece here, and then we can pull it out. Now we'll use our trim removal tool to pull this pin out right here on the shock tower. Now we just pull the sound tube away from the firewall and lift it up and out. And finally, we'll remove our PCV hose by pushing down on these clips here and pulling out. Now, since we've removed the sound tube from the factory inlet, we're going to need to cap that off on the inlet tube and on the firewall. So let's get that done before we actually get to installing the oil separator. Now, to install this grommet on the firewall, you do have to be a bit of a contortionist, and you also want to make sure that you've got a cold engine and not a hot one, because there's not a lot of room to reach in there. Now, there is a second supplied cap that goes over the sound tube fitting here. All you have to do is just put it over the top, push it in, and it'll be secure. Now we can go ahead and install our mounting bracket using the supplied hardware, and we're going to put it on the tab where the sound tube was attached to on the strut tower. And we're just going to leave it loosely attached right now while we get the oil separator attached to it. All right, now we can go ahead and put our oil separator down inside where it's going to be mounted and attach the 2 supplied screws to the top to hold it in place. And we'll tighten it down with our number 2 Phillips screwdriver. Now, with this installed, you want to make sure that the short tube on the oil separator goes to the back PVC outlet on the valve cover, and the long tube goes to the air inlet side. So it's just a matter, and also the ends of this are adjustable. So if it's not in the right position, you can go ahead and twist it, get it in the right position, and then just snap it into place. All right, now we can route our long tube down where we need it, get it out of the way, and snap it into place. Now that we've got everything connected, we can go ahead and tighten up our mounting bracket here, making sure that everything is secured away from any moving parts or any heat sources. And you may need a 10mm wrench to hold the nut on the bottom. When you tighten this up, now we can go ahead and reinstall the engine cover. Now, because the openings for the nuts are so deep and narrow, One thing I like to do is put a little piece of tape after you insert the nut into the socket, put a little piece of tape on it just to hold it in place while you put it on the stud. Now we can go ahead and tighten it down. And that wraps up our review and install of the J&L 3.0 oil separator with the black anodized finish for the driver's side on 18 through current Mustang GTs. Thanks for watching, and remember, for all things Mustang, keep it right here at AmericanMuscle.com.